every single agent, and everybody else was just guessing the whole time. And I've been around people like that in the professional world, and like, pardon my language here, but some of them kind of get off on like chaos. I'm in charge. No one else knows what's going on. Everybody's guessing, and I'm in control and in power. Like, personally, I can't stand that. Like, in case you haven't figured out here in the fast lane, maybe one of my problems, Ty, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm blunt to a fault. Like, there are no like hidden agendas of trying to manipulate and pawn people. It's just, I go more with, as Mike Tomlin would like to remind us,
the standard is the standard.
We're blunt.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And, you know, some people it's not for, but the flip side is, you can tell me if you're wrong. When you walked in the door and what you deal with now, we've been pretty clear in the expectations.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that's the goal. Like, for me, it is. But some people are not. And I think the Big Ten benefits, and the SEC in particular, Greg Sankey, I think, gets off on this, but benefits from a level of chaos, which is a problem. Until you find a way to, and I'm not against this, making them employees, players, where it's legitimate contracts, things are enforceable. If you want to get out of the contract, there are costs that are involved in that. And I've always said, if people ask about the educational piece, deferred education. And people are sitting there saying, well, Virginia, you know, with their rules participating, or, you know, Virginia with the, you have to 60 hours versus the 30-hour transfer rule of credits remaining in the school. You know, does anybody believe that because Duke has a lighter rule for athletes, or Notre Dame or North Carolina, like when someone goes to that school, just like your average student, you tend to believe, oh, you have a Duke degree or a Wake Forest degree or a Notre Dame degree or a Carolina degree. Your general reaction is, it's a pretty good degree. Like, I'm not penalizing you because the athletes get treated one way. Like, I never did before. I'm not now. And so for Virginia, that's the part that, to me, it's kind of intellectual arrogance with them.
I mean, I feel like it's going to be at one point, like later on in the future, I feel like they're going to be like, well, we don't care about the kids going to school no more. You just, like, they could come into you, pay you just to play college now.
To me, I've always said, give them the degree to use. Like, make them sign contracts. It's a 4-year, 2-year contract, 3-year contract, 4-year contract. However long you live that contract out, that's how many years worth of classes you will be compensated for with that university. And you have, I don't know, 10 years from the end of your professional career to redeem those. Because how often have you seen, Carolina is a great example of this. I'm willing to believe that, considering they may have had sham classes to help them, but guys like Vince Carter and Antoine Jamison, mid to late 90s, right in the heart of the sham classes at Carolina. Don't know if they were part of the old infamous African-American Studies department, but they make a great example out of this. I have reason to believe they were in those classes back in the day. They might not have actually taken the classes seriously because they may not have even had to go to class. But when they, on their own volition, years later, decided to go back to Carolina to actually get their degree, I think they took it more seriously. Cam Newton did the same thing at Auburn. Pretty sure from Florida to JUCO, because he got kicked out of Florida for whatever was stealing laptops, and then found his way back to Auburn. Like, when he's there and they're finding a way to keep him eligible, even though there are more investigations coming about, whether his dad took money for him or not, back when that stuff was under the table and people got sloppy with it. I don't know if the academics were a priority, but when you voluntarily go back, that's where the true student athlete part comes. It's athlete then student as opposed to blending it together.
And then it makes you question, like, what was you doing this whole time on campus, especially like the off season? The off season is like, you got a lot of time in your hands. You go to class, you go to study hall. Now it's like, what was you doing this whole time on campus while you was playing football? Oh,
that's a great question, because you played football, so you have that whole background. But it's the can of worms that opened up. And I think not having to deal with that is a big thing for Liberty. Okay, it's harder to compete and win championships at the highest level. But it's not impossible for Liberty to have good runs of success in football and basketball, by all accounts. And take this for what it's worth, but at every home football game, at most home basketball games, maybe not Mid-Atlantic Christian or Central Penn University or whatever it is, college, those type of teams, with all due respect to them, probably not going to those games. You know what the outcome is. But for any decent game there, so take this for what it's worth. But the general sentiment around Liberty is, they're in a pretty good spot when it comes to their collective to compete relative to their peers in a conference. And whether you had NIL in the transfer portal or not, getting to the tournament and winning multiple games was always going to be a challenge to get to the Gonzaga level. It just was. That's the outlier of small mid-major type schools that eventually can compete for national championships, having played for one, losing it, but having played for one a couple of years ago, Gonzaga. That's the outlier. But McKay can do it his way at Liberty University and blend into the background, relatively speaking, and Okay, they may give up something in talent, but in a bigger school, it'd be harder to keep guys around and believe you can develop chemistry while accepting transfers like he's done this year with, again, let's call it what it is. They're undersized, but I think they're actually really good defensive assets and passers. But Porter and Matheny get bagged on a lot. I think overly to an extent by a lot of fans because they're not all that tall. Even though, I maintain the lack of height costs them in certain spots against taller, physical guards. But they also have an ability to make plays on the floor because they're so lower center of gravity that when the ball goes on the floor, they're short and they have quick hands and they move well, that they can poke the ball out and create chaos.
It's not like they're in a bad conference. They actually in a pretty good conference. I mean, Conference USA is actually a pretty good conference to be in and stuff. And then especially the NCAA tournament, now you see a lot of teams have a lot of experienced players and make it a deep and run. So I think I wouldn't stress about anything.
I wouldn't if I was Liberty. Look, they're in the thick of it in a conference that's wide open. There's 6-7 teams that have a legitimate chance. Liberty's one of them to make a run and win the Conference USA tournament. Barring catastrophic changes to the season. And Liberty's already had their big injury with Isaiah Enon, but to their credit, they've actually supplemented the roster now. It was 6 deep with Peter coming off the bench, but they found ways to at times factor in Gabriel McKay regularly. And it may just be passing the ball, setting screens, rebounding, diving on the floor for loose balls. But just that alone gives them a guy that can legitimately be a 7th player in the rotation off the bench and free up the other guys to not have to do all of that work so they can be the creators and scorers. And there is value to that. And then you find a way to get in, Brett Decker Jr. at times, or, what's his name? The guy who had a couple of 3-pointers the other night, whose name escapes me. Not Bryson Spell, but
shoot.
You're making me go back into the archives right now. For Liberty to go back into that and to have multiple options on the bench, it's such an asset to have that. Because now the Flames are in a position where, they can do more than they were previously doing.
Mm-hmm.
They can add more. And it is opened up the door. And all of that, I think, feeds into Richie McKay. He can build a program his way. And it kind of ties back. Took us a while to get here. But it ties back to what we were discussing to begin the fast lane today. I think there's a part of Richie McKay that they tied with the win Saturday against New Mexico State. It tied the all-time wins record at Liberty. But if you listen to the reaction, we'll play in a moment, I think this reaction says all you need to know that McKay is grateful for Flames fans and the support they have. As much as, at times it gets a little overboard. Hey, you'd rather have that passion than apathy. It's annoying at times, yes, if you're a Liberty supporter and you're involved over there, but you'd rather have that than apathy because they're showing up, they're caring, they're invested in more ways than one, and you obviously have that to sell.
And the only thing I'm not afraid is if Liberty fans, you want to keep Richie McKay there. He's a great coach, but say anything UVA, Ron Sanchez gets let go, I'll be more afraid. I'll try my best to make sure Richie McKay stays at Liberty instead, because it could be a feeling that he might go back to UVA. If
you don't give him the support, and here's the thing, fans get on him, but by all accounts, the administration likes Richie McKay. And as long as he's got the support of, let's be real here, the people that have
lots of power,
and they're willing to fundle him.
Dollar bills, y'all.
But not just that. The freedom as well to build the program his way. He's adjusted on the fly with the transfer portal. It's taken longer, and Flames fans at times have been less patient with the fact that it's a microwave society to flip rosters now. It's not always a bad thing. But how LU versus U of L are flipping rosters is different. U of L is Louisville. They've done it in a year. Do we need to go back into the archives and look at the history of football and basketball there with some of their hires that they've had to realize that Louisville flipping it in a year may take a little bit of a different ethical standard, just being generous here, than what Liberty University wants to aspire to. And if you're going to do it that way, you can make changes and evolve. It's just not going to be overnight. And I understand the appeal to Virginia, but the goals and expectations at Virginia, it's harder than ever to do this, but it still is to compete with Duke when they get their act together, North Carolina. Now that they have their act together, Louisville. The expectation of Virginia is to get to that point. And to get to that point, you have to be willing, I think, to much more now than ever. Lean into the NIL, pay-for-player reality, which sometimes it can be great. But sometimes there are major headaches that come with players where they want to negotiate midseason. They're not really binding contracts, so you have no real leverage over them. Look at Christian Bliss now at Virginia. That's one example. And again, no proof, but the guy's been effectively medically cleared and he still has not played. And, read into that what you will, but I'm sure Richie McKay's smart enough to realize, maybe that's going on there. Maybe I'm in a spot where it's harder to get that talent, but it's also a lot of headaches I can avoid.
Definitely. And then especially now you got players quitting during the middle of the season as well. That's a huge headache as well.
Well, you get that at other schools. You're right. I mean, it's not really the whole Virginia thing. They had Jalen Worley who quit before the season began because maybe he saw this team just was not going to be good and he did not want to expend a year of eligibility and play at Virginia, even if the money was right, when he could go to Gonzaga. And that's where he's committed to next year. And again, I don't fault that. That's part of the business. But Richie McKay is not naive. To answer the question of the Three Stooges,
are you that dumb?
No, he is not. He is very intelligent to observe that. You'd think he's tied into Virginia, given those coaches for Bennett, the assistants in particular, Williford, obviously Bennett himself, but Sanchez and McKay, they're pretty tight bond with them. So I'm pretty sure he's aware of what that is, and it's not an abnormal circumstance. And if you're McKay, you sacrifice some in talent, but you're in a spot where you can kind of do it your way, and you're very well compensated for yourself. You have the ability to compensate players, not to the ACC level or the big school level, but relative to your peers in the group of five, you have that ability and opportunity to build a program the way you want. And listen to Richie McKay's response. When asked what it means to be the all-time wins leader at Liberty, how quickly he deflected it.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that back up. No, again, you guys, I've never thought about, and I love Coach Meyer. He obviously did a great job while he was here, but I wish on that record that they could put all the names, and again, the pages would be 3, 4, 5-fold of the people that have helped us win games here. And grateful that I get an opportunity to serve with a group of young men, staff, managers, and on a campus like this that has fabulous leadership. And I want to compliment and honor Dr. Falwell, who hired me, along with Jeff Barber, who believed in me, Jerry Jr., who hired me a second time, along with Jeff Barber again. And like I said, I think Dr. Costin, Jonathan Falwell, and Ian are the best in the business. So blessed that I could do it under their watch, and thankful for what's happened and what's to come.
Listen to how quickly, first of all, the sarcastic thanks for bringing that up. Richie McKay he's happy to answer questions. Like, he'll give a thoughtful response to it. But it's the Tony Bennett analogy of not wanting it to be about him and deflecting it. When Tony Bennett coached at Virginia, we were fortunate. We had him once a year, every year at the beginning of the year. And actually, we were really blessed because we were able to get him beginning or end of sessions to go longer with him. Like, I'm extremely grateful for Tony Bennett and for the staff at Virginia for having set that up when he was there and giving us the opportunity to get the thoughtful responses we had and did with Tony Bennett when he was a coach. So I want to make sure I get that out there to those that may be listening live, VTR in Sports app, Ask Alexa, open VTR in Sports, or Fastlane Ed Lane on the video or wherever you listen to podcast channels. But Tony Bennett did not like to do interviews regularly. Like, we tried to get him on at other times, not as much during the season, but we tried to get him on at other junctures of the offseason, whether they would have a camper and a get together where it could raise awareness for things that Tony Bennett was even doing in the community. And he did not like to do that and would decline politely because he just didn't want to make it about him. And he didn't like to put himself in the spotlight. The Richie McKay response that we just played about, thanks for bringing that up, kind of chuckles and laughs it off. And then he gives a thoughtful answer, but he really doesn't answer the question about what it means to him personally to get the wins. It's, I wish we could bring in everybody else, and I want to thank the people that gave me this opportunity. It's the same mindset of deflecting the blame, or excuse me, in this case, deflecting the credit. He accepts the blame when things go bad, but deflecting the credit when there's an opportunity to bring that in. Having covered college sports, you've been around it before as a former player and now in the media. I've been around it for a while on the media side, Ty. There are a lot of coaches that are on the other end of that spectrum. They are all about, look at what I have done and look at what I have built and promoting what we've built. And it's not always wrong when you're selling yourself and, selling the values of your program to other people. But Tony Bennett was not like that. And it may have cost Virginia in recruiting. And it may have cost Virginia in fundraising, which they're now having to play catch up on. And it's a similar thing, I think, to an extent with McKay. I think it's different. Liberty, the Flames Rising Collective is a very strong collective, and the administration and staff over there are aligned enough in terms of being able to get the resources so that McKay doesn't have to take on that major role. And McKay understands the fan base enough to know that. But I think it's similar to why we bring up the Liberty fans that think McKay should be on the hot seat or think Chadwell should. But the reality is most people that support that program are not that way and actually appreciate a humble coach. It's, forever, whatever you want to criticize the downside of some of the, Liberty's values and maybe being more, some people call it in your face, but being more outspoken about those. I think there is some truth to the flip side, Ty, that there are a lot of people around those programs that the flip side to that is they don't like the attention and fans appreciate that from them. And if you're a McKay or a Chadwell, Freeze always wanted to get back to the SEC. I maintain if the right job opened up for Chadwell, he'd take it, but he can be very picky. I've also said it'd be real hard to pry McKay away from Liberty. Upside of what he can do winning-wise may be different, but still coaching at a high level and having an impact while competing at a high level and kind of playing the modern game of basketball, he can do all that. It's a real appealing thing, and I think getting an award like being the all-time wins leader, I think he's almost glad to be able to get that award on the road. Not that he doesn't want fans to appreciate him, but I think it's, if he gets the all-time wins record on the road, and tomorrow night is probably the night to do it because it's a much more winnable game.
Mm-hmm.
But if he does it on the road, people will mention it and bring it up. But Liberty's not at home for a couple more weeks, and they may bring it up when he's back. But then again, it's so far in the, it happened a few games ago. It's almost great because it fits with McKay's personality, and you can get the wins record out of the way. People can mention it. It's a Saturday game. They don't play again until Thursday of next week, so there's a little time for it to wear off. But he can go about it the way that McKay wants, which is it's really not all about me. Bring it up as you need to tout where the program is, but then we can move on and focus on what we want as a team.
Yeah, because he's still like, he got that one mindset. The team is to win a conference championship, bring it back to Liberty. That's like his main focus.
McKay is not the type of guy, and he has done this for players, mind you, when they've achieved individual accomplishments. Darius McGee, the most noted example. But when they've achieved individual accomplishments, he's all about promoting the player. And again, I don't think this is, hey, I know how to play the ego game where I want to stroke egos. I think it's more, he genuinely feels good for his players. Now, I say this having covered McKay for a handful of years. But I think for him, he doesn't want that attention himself. So I think he's glad to get this on the road. He'll never say it because it would be perceived by people that it's a slap in the face of Liberty fans. I don't think that's the case. I just think it's McKay can go about getting a record and accomplishing something that's there, but I don't think it's ever been his goal to be at Liberty of being the all-time wins record. I think it genuinely is he's driven by winning as much as possible, and that's the type of thing that'll just come whenever it comes.
And making it as a powerhouse school in basketball, even though I think they're still a powerhouse school of football, but he want to make it a powerhouse school of basketball known for Liberty. It's like, okay, Liberty's not known for football, but they also known for basketball.
Yeah, agree, 100%. And that's one of the biggest things is they can be known for both of those major sports. And they've had two coaches that have done that. And it maybe goes back full circle to an extent what we discussed yesterday in the Fast Lane. When we return, someone who has his own perspective on this, WSET's Dave Walls will join us. Then we'll get to a Fast Five at 5-ish, some in case you missed it, some feedback that's come in, and votes of confidence. We have a lot to get to still here in the Fast Lane. Keep your thoughts coming. Fast Lane, Ed Lane, and Ty Tracy 90, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and wherever you listen to podcasts.
Selection, value, finance options, and exceptional service. Why start anywhere else? It's all in one location at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. And with straightforward pricing and inventory arriving daily, there's no reason to start anywhere else than the Motor Mile. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume. The Used Car Superstore is your one stop for most makes and models. Cars, trucks, vans, SUVs, many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. Shop over 900 used vehicles in stock now, more than any other dealer in the area. Sheeler owns the finance company, so getting approved for credit is easy on the Motor Mile. With financing options for every budget, you're a valued customer and not just a number on the Motor Mile. The Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier family-owned car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for 50 years. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com. And we're excited to welcome Honda and Hyundai to the Motor Mile family. Why start anywhere else?
We're here with Colt from We Fix Stupid Computers. Colt, to go along with your residential or individual walk-in services that you offer, you also do a lot of business IT support. How about you discuss that, and what specifically do you do to help businesses in the area?
We see a lot of that. Small to medium-sized businesses, they still have their IT projects. They still need resources to help them within their office and for remote users. And so we'll step in and fill in the gap where we do a lot of projects for them, help them manage their resources, their budgets, and get their technology under control.
Colt, how can these people reach out to you to assess their IT needs?
Call us. Our number is 434-525-8590. Our website, wefixstupidcomputers.com. We're on Facebook, and our office is here locally, 14690 Forest Road, right next to Scott's Cabinet on 221.
Are you already done with winter? At Aquatrek Adventures, we can help you escape. Scuba classes are forming right now. We can have you ready for warm, picture-perfect beaches, clear tropical water, and blue skies in sunny Florida, Cozumel, the Cayman Islands, or even Fiji once you complete your certification. Take that first step. Call Aquatrek Adventures on Mill Lane in Salem and visit our website at aquatrekadventures.com.
This is Mike Golick Jr. Don't miss Gojo and Golick coming up after the Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle right here on VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, 1320 AM, and on the VTRN Sports app.
A man can dream that Super Bowl champion theme music will be playing in over 2 weeks for the Philadelphia Eagles. But unlike Trey Lyle, who gave his picks with Ty Tracy in the morning warm-up from 7 to 8 a.m. this morning and every weekday morning, I, as an Eagles fan, have my doubts about it, really worried about their injuries and just the fact that Jaden Daniels has been playing lights out and sure looks like the real deal at quarterback for our friends in our nation's capital.
Those haters can't stand us. Left hand up. Who are we? The Commanders.
The Washington left-hand uppers, the Commanders. Someone now who is also a Philadelphia Eagles fan, although we swear that's not why he's in the fast lane. It's so we can talk local sports, which we will momentarily. Dave Walls, ABC 13, WSET. Dave, before we get to local sports, the more important thing, you're an Eagles fan. Your level of excitement and or worry about what's going to transpire Sunday, especially since you're probably going to have to hear from your colleague Will Stafford if it doesn't go so well.
Well, see, Will Stafford isn't really used to rooting for anything this late in the season, so I'm letting him have a few free jabs here and there. That's okay. Just like most Commanders fans, usually by now they're used to looking in on, on how many games the Nationals are going to lose next summer. So, I mean, I understand. But my worry and dread, if I'm being serious, they're both at a sky high because the excitement is there. Everything is lined up for the Eagles to be back in the Super Bowl. But let's be honest, the Eagles' worst game this year was that last one against the Commanders because, yes, Jalen Hurts got injured in that one while they were up, but it's the defense who has been the standouts really in the NFC that was their worst game. Jaden Daniels was able to pick them apart, get some good drives going, and put up points that this defense has not given up all year. Even in their quote unquote, rougher games, as much as, Eagles fans maybe felt a little uneasy after letting the Rams have 22. I mean, Washington picked us apart for, 35, 38 points, something like that. And at times made it look easy. So this is a defense that has got to learn from its mistakes and it has got to be watching film all week in order to not repeat those mistakes. So, yeah, my dread, it would be the same way I would feel if the Cowboys were in it or if the Giants were in it. We were facing them because you don't want to have your season end thanks to a division rival because then you hear about it the whole next year, the whole off season, and it will grind on you. So my hope is my Eagles take care of business. A little concerned about Jalen's health, but at the same time, Saquon's healthy, that line's healthy, and if the defense plays up to the usual standard, I think we're looking at a return trip here.
It's time for me to get my usher on in the fast lane. Confessions that I did not have the beep button ready when Dave said my hope is that this happens because we beep out that dirty 4-letter word. Dave, we touched on that part, so we'll pivot away and we'll give our projections and our votes of confidence. Ty will reiterate his for those that missed it on the morning warm-up. I'll give mine as well. Liberty, they're on the road. Richie McKay last Saturday tied the all-time wins record. he'll never say this, but we made the case earlier in the fast lane, and our listeners can disagree with us. Fast lane, Ed Lane, they can send the hate my way. Is there a part of Richie McKay that almost might be relieved that he has a chance to break this all-time wins record on the road? Not that he doesn't appreciate the Flames fans and doing it at Liberty Arena, but that he appreciates the fact that if he does it on the road, the attention is less likely to be on him for breaking the record, considering he wishes so many other people would also get the credit.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that here because, as you and I both well know, Richard McKay isn't someone who likes talking about himself. In fact, he doesn't even really talk about wins and losses to that degree. He talks about, the process of getting there, the character of the people on his team, and the people who he has helping to lead this team. So it's about everything else but Richie McKay in the eyes of Richie McKay. Now, we know that, none of this comes without Richie's leadership and dedication to this program and helping to build it to where it is. And especially in modern collegiate sports, to have that kind of longevity, to have that kind of success year in and year out, certainly says a lot about who he is, not only as a coach, but as a person. So it deserves to be celebrated. But yeah, I think he's going to breathe a little sigh of relief if they're able to get the job done at FIU. And that way they can just kind of cruise back, and it'll be a nice footnote instead of having to deal with it face to face.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is it's at FIU this weekend. Then they're on the road next Thursday and Saturday. So let's presume Richie McKay and Liberty get the win at FIU. And again, time for me to get my usher on in the fast lane. My confessions. I have not seen what the projected line is for the game tomorrow, but Liberty's projected to win. They're at the top half of the conference. FIU is not. If that happens, not only does Liberty not have a game at home for another 2 weeks when this might be old news, but there'll be a handful of days for this to kind of dissipate and die down. And McKay has mentioned all along that the regular season is really just a trial run to get ready for the Conference USA tournament.
Yeah, and that's really what Richie has said all along is that, even when they went on that little mini losing streak, he said, really, you're playing at this point for that seeding in the conference tournament. Whatever you do now, that helps make it either easier or harder for you for the conference tournament. And you got to get battle tested and ready for that because, we know we're going to see the Sam Houstons and we might see, the Western Kentucky up there again, or the UTEP, this is a much tougher Conference USA. And so Richie's not one who gets drowned in the night in, night out, results and gets beaten down or gets too high or too low. He's rather looking at it as a climb in order to get up to where they need to be in order to get ready for Huntsville in mid-March. So, and he's still got at least about another 6 to 8 weeks before we get to that. So Richie always likes to keep it level-headed, and you're right. All this stuff about him becoming the winningest coach in program history, it'll be calmed down until you or I bring it up, and then he glares at us for a second before he gives us an answer.
Yeah. He'll give us an answer. It's kind of like Tony Bennett. I mean, is this one of the areas where you see the similarities? Tony Bennett never liked to talk about his program at UVA. He was always reticent to do that. He'd do the media availability, the obligatory ACC tip-off and other media availability. But, I can speak to this as well, Dave. When we asked Tony, even in the offseason, for media opportunities to promote, whether it's charitable events or things that were going on, he politely declined because he didn't want it to be about him. Is this where you see the Richie McKay, Tony Bennett similarities the most when it comes to being uncomfortable talking about yourself, which is rather refreshing but ironic as well in a profession where a lot of these coaches never miss an opportunity to talk about how great they are?
Yeah, there's a definite similarity. I go back to thinking about Tony's run in 2019 through March Madness in the Final Four. And whenever a question would come about Tony, he would shuffle it off and talking about his players' growth or about his assistant coaches and the work that they've been doing. It's the exact same thing Richie McKay does. And, but I think that also goes to show that the level of focus is there on the players where it should be, on the growth of the players where it should be, rather than glorifying personal accomplishments. That's just not who Richie McKay is. That's not who Tony Bennett is, and even when they won the whole national championship, again, it was never about Tony Bennett. It was never about personal satisfaction. It was about seeing his players complete the goal and complete everything that they set out to do. And that's where he took his satisfaction. And Richie McKay has the same. When his players win, it's not about him. It's about, knowing the fact that his players executed everything that they needed to do. And he was just proud to play a part in their growth.
Dave Walls, ABC 13 WSET, stepping into the fast lane. Dave Walls, WSET on Twitter as he's joining us. Dave, we will pivot away from Liberty University basketball because the expectation is they'll take care of business at FIU this weekend. They did not play yesterday, and they won't play again until Thursday. To high school basketball. You know, I can't say this as well as our own Ty Tracy, who's with us right now in studio, where he goes, man, y'all be tripping. But is that the appropriate response for what happened last week for that Glass Heritage boys basketball game where, look, I am all for rivalries being as intense, but when we're postponing games because threats are being made, that's when it's gotten ridiculous. And you just hope the people that are involved in doing that get the professional consultation and help they need to make sure they keep this in proper perspective.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, but I mean, they had no other choice but to cancel the game. And unfortunately, you see this happen with rivalries, not just in our area, but around the country at the high school level, where fans and students, they get too worked up and they do, sometimes result in fights. I mean, even my high school back in Delaware, they used to always have a rivalry game. We always had a rival game on a Friday night at 7 o'clock. Well, now they play it at Saturday morning at 10:30. That's because 2 or 3 years in a row, there was a literal riot in the stands and they had to stop the game early and send everybody home. When rivalries get too intense, that's kind of the byproduct. And so, I don't know if there's anyone truly at fault other than the people who make the threats, but at a certain point, the fan bases kind of have to come together and sort of make it work. You can hate one another, for whatever that is, but you've got to find a way to at least turn it more into positive cheering and less into the hate between the two teams. And that's the only way these two fan bases and really any rivalry in particular are going to be able to get through it.
For boys basketball, everyone knows about Glass and Heritage being at the top of the Seminole District. Last year, it was Jefferson Forest, but they lost a ton off of that team, and they're good, but not what they were last year. Are we at the point now where we've also got to consider what Matt Klein is doing with LCA? Is there another team that needs to legitimately be considered among that upper echelon of the Seminole District?
Yeah, no doubt about it. And to be frank, the Seminole District as a whole is much stronger this year than I think it's been in the last couple of years because, like I said, Matt Klein's been doing an amazing job at LCA. They're in the mix to take the district title and make a deep run here, but you've got Glass who's right there. Rustburg is a 10-win team. They're like 10-3. They're in our game of the week tonight against EC Glass. Jefferson Forest, like you mentioned, they've lost a lot of players, but they're still good and they're evolving. They're getting better. And even the teams that are on the lower end right now, like your Brookvilles, and your Heritages, they fight hard night after night. Heritage is a 500 level team right now. The whole district up and down has gotten that much tougher. Matt Klein has certainly done a great job at LCA, but I think you got to give a shout out to really everyone for stepping up their game, not shying away from the tougher out of district and out of region opponents, and really making themselves better through some really tough early season matchups.
Meanwhile, for girls basketball, how cool is it that two of the smaller schools in the area in Bedford County, Stanton River and Liberty, look like they are maybe the two best schools in the area relative to their competition in girls basketball?
Yeah, very, very cool. And it was great to see them match up just a few nights ago where Stanton River defeated Liberty, really handing Liberty their first loss of the year. But, whether you're in Bedford or Manita, these two teams have also not shied away from big matchups. Stanton River went out and played William Fleming, who was a powerhouse year in, year out, had a bad fourth quarter and took the L in that one. But Kim Jones does a great job down in Manita. And meanwhile, in Bedford, they've got some great players, up and down that starting lineup. They've been able to really kind of dominate the competition. And to their credit, too, both fan bases turn out. If you go to a girls basketball game at either one of those high schools, it's kind of like going to a boys game at a lot of other bigger schools. The local people who support those schools know the talent that they have, and they come out and support them. And I hope they continue to do so because the way they're playing right now, both those teams are going to make some nice runs into regions.
Dave, we'll wrap it up on this. I'm going to quote the cinematic masterpiece Good Burger, the character Kurt, with,
"Well, I should have known.
I should have known." When Michael Vick took the opportunity to become the head coach at Norfolk State, well,
I should have known
that Andre Kendrick, who played with Vick in the same backfield at Virginia Tech and has a son that was at William & Mary, might be a candidate to play for Norfolk State. It never really occurred to me, which, again, is my own fault. But he now is transferring from William & Mary to Norfolk State. How much is this the classic
Well, I should have known.
that we should have known? Because, it's nothing against William and Mary. They're a great academic school. They've had a great run of success with Mike London, but sometimes that type of relationship, Vic and Kendrick in particular, is real tight.
Yeah, Drayshawn Kendrick had already said he was going to transfer out of William and Mary. I think the timing worked out perfectly. And but not only the connection that Andre Kendrick has with his former Virginia Tech teammate Michael Vick, but Vic had also done a lot of off-season coaching with Drayshawn, to help him with his athleticism. Also he was still working out as a quarterback at the time. And so the two of them already had a pre-existing relationship, and the fact that I think once Michael officially committed to Norfolk State, I think it was a sure thing that that's where Drayshawn was going to go. And honestly, I would expect big things out of him this year, because I think he was to be honest with you, like I said, Mike London does some good things at William and Mary. I think Drayshawn was criminally underused at William and Mary. It looked like he would have a big game, and then they just wouldn't utilize him for a game or two. And now I don't watch William and Mary week in and week out, but the games that I would see, sometimes he just couldn't find him on the field. He wouldn't even be out there. And then he'll go out there and he'll catch 2 big touchdown passes, 100 yards. It looks like he's set up for a big thing, and then they would have him back on the bench. So I would expect this to be a huge breakout year for Drayshawn, and I think it'll be a fun ride this year watching that Norfolk State team.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Not only with just Michael Vick and what he does at Norfolk State, but now you got an added local flair with Drayshawn Kendrick, somebody who brings flair, and it's local all the time. On WSET is Dave Walls. Dave, we're grateful for your time today in the fast lane, and if Washington wins, we painfully will serenade you with the song that I'm sure Dave Walls will be having to hear, which is
Those haters can't stand us. Left hand up. Who are we? The Commanders.
from his colleague Will Stafford.
I think it's just great that Washington is able to experience what playoff winning is like for the first time in like 30 years. So, after this, they can go back to losing, being 5-11 or whatever. So, let them enjoy their little run. We'll go out and continue to winning NFC championships and go back to the Super Bowl. That's fine. It'll be like watching a Cinderella movie in reverse. We'll put them to sleep by the end of Sunday.
Some emphatic trash talk from Dave Walls for a game that you can hear with coverage starting at 2 p.m. Sunday on your home for the NFL playoffs, including the NFC and AFC championship games right here on VTRN Sports. Dave, it's great to catch up with you. Enjoy the basketball action this evening, and we'll keep it locked to Full Court Press after the games.
All right. Have a great weekend, and go Birds. We'll talk to you.
Dave Walls with us here in the Fast Lane. Amen to that. Am I optimistic it'll happen? Find out next here in the Fast Lane. From interest rates to everyone's personal credit history and background, everybody's in a different spot. At Feller Chevrolet, they understand that. It's why Greg Walker spoke with us and shared how Feller Chevrolet can work with you.
Well, we have multiple lenders, so everybody's different in personality and in their credit equity of what they put into a vehicle. So the different lenders have different areas that they like to go after, and we know which ones to use for the different individuals to get them the best payments possible terms that they need. As far as interest rates, everybody is saying, oh my goodness, they're getting so high. But if you look historically, we're really right in a rate area that traditionally for housing and cars is very competitive. We've just been so spoiled.
At Feller Chevrolet, they work with people from diverse credit backgrounds to get the right car for their needs. Stop by and see them, Main Street in Alta Vista, and visit fellersdirect.com.
Hi, I'm Chuck from Aquatrack Adventures in Salem. The Virginia Talk Radio Network and InsaneRadioDeals.com have helped our company grow by sharing our company's message throughout Central and Southside Virginia. The gift cards and experiences sold on InsaneRadioDeals.com have brought us many new customers. If you're a business that wants to grow with a message that resonates and gets results, I highly recommend InsaneRadioDeals.com and the Virginia Talk Radio Network. Simply put, it works.
Allstate agent Donovan Howell is now serving Lynchburg. He lives and works here just like you. And with all kinds of local insurance advice, Donovan is someone you can count on to help you protect all that's good in your life. Donovan makes it easy to save on the quality protection you need, and I'll even help you do the switching and the paperwork for you.
Call or come by the Donovan Howell Allstate office in Windhurst today.
This Sunday is Conference Championship Weekend, and the Virginia Talk Radio Network is here for you with a Virginia Talk Radio Network megacast. VTRN Sports has been bringing you all the big games all year in the NFL, and now we're blowing it out for the NFC and AFC Championship game. Catch the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Washington Commanders and the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Buffalo Bills, with coverage starting at 2 p.m. this Sunday across the entire Virginia Talk Radio Network.
This is Mike Golick Sr. Don't miss Gojo and Golick coming up after the Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle right here on VTRN Sports 93.3 FM, 1320 AM, and on the VTRN Sports app.
Man, we're going to cram 3 features into one segment of the Fast Lane. Might as well try starting now.
You know when a team is so confident, they give the coach a vote of confidence?
Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose.
That's how you can treat these professional speculators in the Fast Lane.
Guaranteed! Guaranteed!
Now, it's time for your votes of confidence, where these so-called experts named Ed Lane and Trey Lyle give you their picks for what it's worth.
So in college basketball this weekend, and by the way, Saturday, we have 3 games starting at 4:30 p.m. with Clemson at Virginia Tech, and then 2 games after that. The big one is Kansas versus Houston. We won't make the picks for the other games, but Clemson's at Virginia Tech. They're an 8.5-point favorite. 136.5 is the over-under. Clemson, they're fundamentally sound. They're a strong team. I fully expect Clemson to win this game. Virginia Tech, they've played hard, and they are coming off a loss that's disappointing at Georgia Tech. I think you get a good effort out of Virginia Tech. I think they cover this game. They play better at home. Their guards play better at home than they have on the road with 17 turnovers Wednesday against Georgia Tech. But I do believe there's enough for Clemson there, and they're a mature enough team under Brad Brownell. This has kind of been a staple of Clemson, scrapping and clawing their way to victories. It's not always pretty. Clemson is, they are agnostic to style points, unlike a lot of programs. So 8.5, I'll take them with Virginia Tech. I am under no delusion that they're going to win, but I think Clemson, mature, poised. It's a tough one, but they find a way to get it done, and they take care of business at Virginia Tech. Meanwhile, starting when that game's in the second half, Notre Dame at Virginia. Who's catching 1.5? I'm going with Virginia just because they're at home. Marcus Burton is averaging almost 20 points a game, and we know that the Cavaliers have struggled defending scoring guards. But Virginia actually can create some offensive shots, especially in the post. I think there's more scoring opportunities. Tay Davis has been pretty good in the post for Notre Dame. I actually think Virginia can handle him. It's the scoring guards like Burton, he's an all-ACC caliber player that will not and probably should not be a first-team player just because Notre Dame is so abysmal. I think you can actually make an argument. Notre Dame, they've had a more disappointing season coming off of a real good first year last year with Micah Shrewsbury, who came over from Penn State. Now they're 8-10. They're 2-5 in the ACC. And when I see these teams that have big losing records in a bad conference like the ACC, that is a major alarm bell. It may not be the coach. It may be the system, the buy-in, the focus on the program. But the thing for Notre Dame is they have plenty of resources. It's not Virginia Tech where they're diverting them from basketball to fun football. And you're like, okay, you're kind of, you're making chicken salad out of you-know-what. Notre Dame's got it. So that to me is even more disappointing. Okay, sure, they're 8-10. Virginia's 9-10. They're 2-5. Virginia's 2-6 in the ACC. Somehow this game is sold out at John Paul Jones Arena for a 6:00 tip. Sold out, at least according to tickets sold. I don't know about how many people will be there. But the Virginia disappointment is obviously understood with Tony Bennett leading the program at the beginning of the year. The Notre Dame one is more disappointing, relatively speaking. There's no line on the Liberty FIU game. Here's the weird thing. FIU, they're 1-5 in Conference USA. They're 7-12 overall. FIU so far this year, in those 5 losses, all of them have been by single digits. And their one win was against Western Kentucky, which came on the road here and won at Liberty earlier this year. And FIU destroyed them. I still think Liberty gets it done. They're on the road. They're locked in and focused. They've had a full week to rest and recover. I will take Liberty. I have no clue what the line is, but kind of get the impression this one will probably be somewhere in the 2 to 3 possession game. So I'll go anywhere from like 4 to 9 points, where it's a struggle, but Liberty ultimately pulls away in this one, and it may not be free throw shooting. Don't really trust that, but it will be defense down the stretch. Meanwhile, NFC and AFC championship games coverage begins 2 p.m. this coming Sunday on VTRN Sports. 3 o'clock kickoff, Washington at Philly. Look, I'll be real here. And this is not just because I have Washington at 16-1 to win the NFC and 40-1 to win the Super Bowl, both of which I think are very alive. As an Eagles fan, like I am legitimately worried because Jaden Daniels is the real deal at quarterback, despite what Trey Lyle might tell you on the morning warm-up. Trey is firmly, when it comes to Jaden Daniels, when you mention Jaden Daniels, Trey mentally closes his eyes, like I'm doing here if you're watching at Fastlane, Ed Lane, or VTRN Sports on Facebook Live or YouTube. Trey closes his eyes and does the visualization exercise that he's going over to the big river in Africa, Nile. Because he just cannot. He cannot grasp this. And if Philadelphia loses to Washington, it will be because Jaden Daniels has a good game. And this will be more of Trey Lyle having to literally stare this brutal reality in the face that the guy that causes him to go to the big river in Africa, Nile, is once again asserting himself that, hey, you're going to have to deal with me for like a decade, and you just don't have it in Philadelphia. And as an Eagles fan, that's what worries me. Where I could see this going totally kaput is Philadelphia is really good at most positions, but they're not as good at quarterback and they're not as good at head coach. I trust Dan Quinn, who's gotten to the Super Bowl and knows how to get over the hump in these games, maybe not the Super Bowl, but at least get there, more than I trust Nick Sirianni, who, by the way, has gone to a Super Bowl. And I don't trust Jalen Hurts. Part of it's health related. Part of it's the offensive line for Philly is kind of banged up this time of year. Pass catchers, Goddard and Brown, are banged up. I just have real concerns about that. So I like Washington. Typically one road and one home team wins. I mean, to me, I know it's square. It's the obvious. But if I'm going down just saying, well, I trust Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in a big game more than anybody else, can you blame me?
I can't blame you on that one.
I mean, isn't that the logical one?
That is. So it's nothing to say like you're wrong. Like, no, you're actually right about that. So I can't say nothing about that.
Look, I would love it if Philly makes it as an Eagles fan. And I would be over the moon. It'd be awesome. I'm willing to lose the two $30 bets at 16-1 and 40-1 on Washington for the Eagles to get back to the World Series or back to the Super Bowl. It'd be awesome. Like, I would love for them to hoist the Lombardi Trophy. I do think Washington's going to be getting there at some point with Jaden Daniels. But if Philly can delay it and get their own for a second time, hey, I never thought they'd get one. If they could get two, this would be really cool. But I'm not holding my breath. The other part is I just trust Kansas City does not care about style points. Like, they don't. Take them on the money line. Okay, you have to lay a little bit more for it. But if you're a bettor, ask yourself this question, and I am. Are you willing to lose the money? If I lose the money because I trusted Mahomes and Andy Reid, I mean, hey, you know what? It's probably the wise move anyway. I'm okay with that.
I ain't gonna lie, knowing me, the two people I put my faith in is, even though Joe Burrow's not in the playoffs, I'll put my faith in Josh Allen. He's going to put that cape on. I feel like he's going to come out saying, forget this. I'm getting tired of losing to Pat Mahomes. I need to get me a win against Pat Mahomes to build my legacy up.
So it's interesting, by the way. You know, I've got Washington and Kansas City in the Super Bowl, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I know Trey's on the other side of this. He's got Philly and Kansas City in the Super Bowl for the morning warm-up today.
I got Philly on Buffalo.
I hope it's Philly and Buffalo, and part of it's if Philly doesn't win the Super Bowl, I'd like it to be a starved fan base like Buffalo. Like, if it wasn't Philly, I wanted it to be Detroit and Buffalo, just because fans that are starved, like, I know what it was like when Philly finally broke through and won the Super Bowl and how awesome that was when you'd never seen it before. For those that have not, I wish that for them, except at my own team's expense. I hope it's Philly. It'd be awesome if it happens, but I am very nervous and have major reservations about this matchup just because, to me, Jaden Daniels is the real deal. And even if you can get pressure on him, he can move around. And he's so poised at being able to figure out, even with the four-man pressure, the volume of injuries for Philadelphia is a major concern. Meanwhile, feedback has come in. So we're going to punt on the Fast Five at 5-ish today because those topics we can get to later. But we've been overdue for your feedback. We got to some of it yesterday. Now it's time for a little more fan feedback.
Come join the chat or give us a piece of your mind. Trey Lyle VT and Fastlane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Now, it's time for fan feedback in the Fastlane.
So in the NFL playoffs, Shannon has a really interesting point. that he brought up on the NFL playoffs. Remember that 2018 draft? The first 3 players selected were Baker Mayfield by Cleveland, Saquon Barkley by the Giants, and Sam Darnold by the Jets. And they all went to the postseason, and none of them with the team that drafted them. Barkley, of course, had the bad offensive line in New York, so I'll give him a free pass. But the thing that jumps out to me, and this is what Shannon added, is some quarterbacks just need time and a decent supporting cast. Neither QB had enough cast in their previous outposts. Patience is a long-lost commodity in college and pro sports. Everyone wants to win now and possible, and they don't want to build from within culture. The comments about patience is so true from what I have to say for Shannon and what he says.
Actually, Baker did have a good cast because he had OBJ and Jarvis Landry and Nick Chubb, and they still made it to the playoffs. The Browns didn't want to put in faith in him. That's the problem.
That goes to the other point, though. Patience is a long, lost art. Patience from the teams to allow the players to grow and develop. And Cleveland is not exactly known for that. The Jets with Sam Darnold, they're especially not known for that. So, yeah, Shannon is absolutely right. Fans don't have it because it's a now society. But I think even more so, it's on owners to just empower the right leaders, meaning coaches, GMs, and the player leaders to instill a measured growth process. But a lot of times, those are the people that they've made money by being impatient. And sometimes being patient is a long lost art when it comes to major college athletics. The whole Liberty debate, we need probably a little bit more time to get to when it comes to sports. But one more that popped up. Virginia Tech, they still have not announced a defensive coordinator. Corey chimes in. A buddy of mine still thinks the Hokies make a run at Nick Sorensen now that he was reassigned in San Francisco, but I would still rather have Poindexter. He benefits personally from the control and familiarity standpoint, but if I'm taking a long look in the mirror and asking myself, what has that gotten me up to? You have to ask that about Brent Pry, is the familiarity angle. Truthfully, both of those guys represent familiarity. Maybe it's another one in Daryl Tapp. Trey brought that up today on the morning warm-up. But Virginia Tech is lower on the pecking order as far as potential coaches to come in there and be the defensive coordinator. So with the opening now at Notre Dame, because Al Golden has gone to the Cincinnati Bengals, for the opening that may happen at Ohio State if Jim Knowles goes to Oklahoma, which has an opening, and of course in the NFL and Penn State having lost their coordinator to Clemson, just from a raw pecking order standpoint, those are all ones that take precedent over Virginia Tech. Meanwhile, when we come back Monday in the Fast Lane, we will react to all this, plus any potential breaking news. Fast Lane Ed Lane, where you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to the Fast Lane on VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, W227 BG Timberlake, and 1320 AM, WVGM Lynchburg.